You're watching ESPN First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
I did a great job last year shedding things and getting us to a position where we have this flexibility. But I do think that this team has to be competitive. We have to get back in the competitive zone where we're out there competing every night for 48 minutes. That's something we're attempting to do. And then everything will work the way it's supposed to work. And I think that when you have trainable athletes, I think that comes along with it.
Well, that was Phil Jackson saying he did a great job, even though the Knicks finished with the worst record in franchise history. Jackson hopes to use the cap space and the team's #4 pick to turn things around for the Knicks. So are you buying the Zen Master plan for the Knicks, Michael?
I did a great job. He even said, you know, I might deserve to get a vote for Executive of the Year. I think maybe he was blinding himself when he was reaching over to pat himself on the back. 17-65, and you did a great job. Come on. And the funny thing is, he didn't even say we need to win. We just need to be competitive. What does that mean? You lose by not as much? What does that mean? We just want to be down by 10 going into the fourth quarter instead of 65. Like, I don't understand the thought process. Are you that blind to what's going on around you? Or have you surrounded yourself with people that don't pull you to the side and go, come here, man, let me talk to you for a minute before you out there and say something ridiculous like you're about to do? I understand he's the Zen Master, and I understand where he came from. But to say something like this not only makes you look a little bit crazy, now the organization's got to be thinking to themselves, what are we going to do with this dude if this doesn't work? Because what's next?
Other than Knicks, they'll figure something out. They'll throw money at something else. That's just kind of the way they work.
They'll get it done. But it's scary that he had to actually say, I did a great job. You know, I mean, how often do you hear people kind of pat themselves on the back? More of my concern for the Knicks as it pertains to Phil is just that old school mentality that he seems to still have in terms of, you know, he's not embracing really one-on-one basketball, that's where the NBA is moving. You know, still dreaming about the triangle and the way the game used to be played. And I'm not sure if he's heading into closing that cap space or getting the right acquisitions with that cap space, if he's going about getting the type of athlete that's going to be successful now in the NBA. That's what concerns me, is that I think he's going to have to be willing to come into the new era a little bit in order to really maximize that space he does have.
It's funny because he says he wants to be competitive, but that was better than last year where he basically almost guaranteed them going to the playoffs last year. So I think he's kind of taken a step back from that ledge and said, maybe I should slow down a little bit.
Red flag #2 for crazy.
Yeah, but you're right. And here's the thing. One of the things he said during the season was, right when the college basketball season was wrapping up, he's like, oh, if we get the #1 pick, I know who I'm taking. And I'm like thinking to myself, wow, that's a newbie front office guy right there. Because you don't say that without speaking to the kids, without working them out. I mean, it just sounded pompous and ridiculous, okay? How are you going to sit there and tell everyone that you, the Zen Master, know more than everyone else? You just have to see them play in a college basketball setting and you know who the guy you would take at #1 is. I just feel like that's just ridiculous. Now, with that said, I think a lot of it is, and I asked him this question one time. He was on Mike and Mike when I was filling in with Golick. And I asked him, I said, what would make you good at this particular job? Because we know how great you are as a coach. And, you know, he talked about his experiences and whatnot. But then he kind of referenced, if I recall correctly, something to the effect of having been around some of the greats. You know, Jerry West and whatnot, and Red Holtzman. And that's fine and dandy. A lot of us have been around great people in our lines of work. It doesn't mean that we are those people. Right. And just because you're around them doesn't mean you see how they cook the meal every day. So I think when you look at Phil, he kind of dove in head first very late in his career and up in age into a particular aspect of the game that he wasn't as familiar with. And being a coach is one thing. Being a personnel guy is a completely different skill set.
Yeah. What other GM has come out and said after a 17-65 season, I did good?
I did great.
How about that?
No, well, that's preposterous. I mean, I think we all agree with that.
But I think the thing that really caught my attention is when he said trainable athletes. To me, that's a signal in my mind. Maybe he thinks today's players are not coachable. Maybe that's what he's looking for out of the gates, you know, before maybe some other skills is, can I coach them? Maybe that's what he saw when he already knew he was going to take the #1 pick. So he seemed to maybe have some underlying frustration there with how trainable or coachable these athletes may be. But let's admit this too. Carmelo Anthony is not getting younger. He does not have a lot of time left for a project.
And injuries are mounting up on him.
Exactly.
He is not a trainable athlete anymore.
Well, right, and injuries are mounting up. So with Carmelo having limited, you know, time really where he can be in his prime, you've got to make an impact right away. As you mentioned, you can't just say, oh, we're going to be competitive. Carmelo, I think, would say, we got to win.
At least with the Sixers GM, he basically came out and told the whole town, we're going to stink for a little while. And then you give that guy a pass. You're all right. Well,
Sure.
He was honest.
Which is what, as a fan, you would think to yourself, we're going to what?
Yeah.
Like you came out and you got away with saying that? Hey, we're going to be
Kinda
bad for a few years. Phil Jackson's doing the exact opposite.
In New
He's
York,
coming
you
out
can't
with
get away with that.
Well,
No,
that's
that's
what.
the problem.
That's the
New York,
thing.
you
But
can't, yeah.
so how long does he have then? What if he comes out next year? If they get 20 wins, now he says, I told you we were competitive.
Well, here's
Right.
the thing. Who's going to want to play there? Because I get the sense that guys don't necessarily want to play there. And it's not like Phil's the coach. You know, Derek Fisher is liked around the league, and I think that they're kind of hoping that because he had a great relationship with Kevin Durant while he was in Oklahoma City, that maybe Kevin Durant will give them a shot. And maybe that will be the case. Maybe Kevin Durant will open the door to them and let them sit in and pitch him, per se. But I just feel like there's not really going to be any impact players going there anytime soon. Okay, Greg Monroe's a nice player, but is he an A-level star where he's going to carry your team? I think that's a guy that seems to be interested in going to the Knicks. I just don't know where he's going to get these guys to make that team a viable option for a championship.
That's the thing I'll ask LaChina, because you're the athlete on the panel. You are the athlete. Phil Jackson said, I want a trainable athlete. I don't necessarily know. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
That's what I mean. Like, if somebody say, hey, man, you might not be the #1 pick in the draft, but you're a trainable athlete.
Well,
what'd you call me?
Right, and as I alluded to, trainable to me sounds like coachable, you know? And the thing is, you hit the nail on the head. If Phil is the coach, then I'm saying, okay, Phil Jackson come on, he knows more about this than we ever will. And he's been with Michael Jordan, and the knowledge is ridiculous. But the head coach is Derek Fisher, which changes things a little bit. So how trainable do they have to be for Derek or for Phil? But I think going back to what Phil said, I am less concerned with how much cap space he has and what he's going to do with that cap space.
Right.
That, to me, will define greatness.
And, Michael, to your point before, how long will it take, if ever, for Phil to fix the Knicks?
The Knicks do not have the same time frame that the Sixers have. You said New Yorkers are not going to put up with this type of talk. If this type of talk is around next year, there's going to be pitchforks and fire, let me tell you, because they're going to be like, I don't care how competitive you think you will or how good of a job you thought you did, enough's enough. You got to go.
Outside of a 54-win season here a couple of years ago, I mean, the Knicks have been pretty awful for over a decade now. So I think what's happened here is that the New Yorker, maybe they are in a good spot, because maybe the New Yorker says, you know what, it's been so bad here, we'll take anything. Like, just get us into the playoffs, get us an 8th seed, and that may be enough, at least initially.
Yeah.
Maybe initially, but 35 wins next season, and they're still missing the
35 wins may get you in the postseason in the East, though.
Yeah,
35
the East, I was going to say,
Well,
in
yeah.
the Eastern Conference, there's no excuse for not
It's
getting in.
possible.
Well, from the East out to the West, our ESPN's Mark Stein is reporting that the Lakers are interested in trading for Sacramento's DeMarcus Cousins. But a source close to the team tells ESPN's Chris Broussard that the Kings owner will not allow Coach George Karl to trade Cousins. George Karl was asked about the reports on Tuesday. Take a listen.
I think it's just a lot of crazy fibs and lies. You know, it's just a situation where, you know, we won 29 games last year. And for us as a basketball organization, we want to get better. Because he's our best player, we know that. We want him committed and dedicated to being in Sacramento and playing and leading us to the first playoffs in Sacramento in 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
You are not interested in trading DeMarcus Cousins.
You know, my interest right now is commitment, trust, and building a team that's excited about being in Sacramento, excited and committed to being a good basketball team and representing the city of Sacramento.
All right, George, I'll give this to you first. How much longer will Cousins be with the Kings?
Man, look, this is tough because I really like George Karl. Yeah. He was one of our colleagues here. But he didn't answer that second question. He did the sidestep right there.
He gave us the Matrix.
Yeah. He looked like he was like Neo. The bullets were coming. He was like, whoa.
He looked like he was at a golf outing. He should have been on Dancing with the Stars because he was just soft-toed now. Woohoo!
The Sacramento Kings are one of the most dysfunctional franchises, not only in the NBA, but in all of sports right now. You've got an owner who has done and said a lot of crazy things, okay? He said that he'd be okay with his team playing 4-on-5 on defense so they can get out on the break earlier. I mean, that's just nonsense right there. And here's the thing. He loves DeMarcus Cousins. Okay, I get it. The owner and the star players should get along really well. So then why did he fire the coach in Mike Malone that got along with DeMarcus Cousins when they were actually playing pretty well under Mike Malone? And then he brings in George Karl, who at the time, if we recall, there were a lot of reports like, ooh, we don't know if that's going to work. You know, both sides are kind of like, they don't fit with what each other wants to do. And then, of course, we have the actual friction between the two. None of this should be a surprise, okay? I covered a game of theirs. They were in Miami, and they were down 13, 14 points in the fourth quarter, and they lost the game. I went into the locker room with our own Tom Haberstroh, and one of the beat writers for Sacramento asked DeMarcus, hey, so, you know, what happened there at the end of the game? You guys blew the lead, blah, blah, blah. And DeMarcus, and I'm paraphrasing, said something to the effect of, that the offense makes him more predictable. That he started by saying that, look, we're all working. It's only been a couple of weeks. You know, we'll try to get it together. But then he went on to say that it makes him more predictable, easier to defend at times. And right there, I was like, oh. I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks. I mean, you play basketball, okay? Like, you're the athlete here. Yeah. You know, you say that, like, that raises an eyebrow.
It definitely does. No, absolutely. And I'll tell you this as an athlete, if you have even an inkling of an idea that your coach doesn't want you there, which, by the way, George Karl answered that second question, sounds like he's not so sure. Yeah. Your level of investment, your level of trust is not going to be anywhere it needs to be the leader of that team. So in my opinion, something's got to happen. Someone's got to go. And DeMarcus Cousins, I mean, I know there's talks about him going to the Lakers. That would be a great place for him because let's be real. He needs a little attitude adjustment. He needs a pro, a veteran, like maybe a Kobe Bryant that can bring him along, that can show him how it's done, that will, when he starts to pout, he will say, be quiet, sit down, I'm running this, you're not going to lose games for us, and we're moving along. So, yes, I think that relationship from the cryptic tweet we saw.
Snake in the grass.
Snake in the grass.
Do we have the tweet? Can we put that thing up on the screen? That was fantastic.
That was good.
It was well done on his part. But he's letting us know that he is not comfortable. He feels like there's some people that don't have his back. Yeah. And he's on the lookout for sure.
This is what I don't understand. You have the owner who loves the player and the coach saying this guy, he's our leading scorer. But, you know, I only want people that want to be here. So then Cousins puts that tweet out, which he didn't type any words. Cool. You're telling me that these two guys can't get on the phone and talk to one another? You're airing this out here? The only person that I think looks bad in this is George Karl.
No, see, I think the owner looks bad. The owner knew that George Karl and DeMarcus were going to be a bad fit from the get-go. Everybody on God's green earth was telling him that. Yeah.
But for George Karl to not come out and go, listen, we're putting the best team on the floor that's available, and whatever pieces I get, I'm going to coach them up and make this the best team that's available to me. At least in saying that, he's throwing a little bit of padding between him and DeMarcus. You know what I mean? Just a little bit out there. But for him to just dance around that question and do the
Well, and let's be honest, DeMarcus has shown some emotional immaturity. So where a player that had a little more may be able to maybe pick up the phone and call coach and say, well, DeMarcus has a way of, you know, really helping people understand how he feels, and it's not always the best way. He's a young star. I think he'll grow. I think he'll mature. But at this point, it's a relationship that, at this point in DeMarcus' career, I don't think can be mended.
With the cap space,
is what you're saying.
No.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to go. She's right. LaChina's right. Somebody's got to go. Now, here's the thing. Are you going to pay another coach to go away?
And with the cap space that they have, you can bring in that mature guy that's going to help.
Who's going to want to play in Sacramento?
Well, that's
knowing that there's a toxic situation.
Why you got to throw that into the mix?
And then what are they going to do?
Right, it's about the toxic situation more than anything else.
What are they going to do about that relationship between George Karl and DeMarcus Cousins?
Well,
nothing.
What's easier to get? Is it easier to get someone with the talents that DeMarcus Cousins has, or a coach? Because in my opinion, George Karl's the easier replaced one. You're not going to get a guy like DeMarcus Cousins where you can just pick him out whenever you want to. George Karl, at his age, where am I going to get an NBA coach? Well, according to the Cleveland Cavaliers, we can pick one up anyway. Let's just go to Walmart. Where's Target?
Yeah, but if you do make a coaching change, I still think you need that vet to come in with
Absolutely.
to really help DeMarcus. And I mean, because we don't want to be doing this his entire career.
Yeah, he needs an alpha dog, okay?
Yeah.
And we discussed this before the show. Like, I referenced Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace was a guy, when he was in Portland, they relied upon him in a lot of ways. And then when he went to Detroit, and he had Chauncey Billups, and he had Rip Hamilton, and Ben Wallace, and that group, and Larry Brown, and then they got him to play as well as he's ever played in a team setting. And I think maybe that's what DeMarcus needs, is whether it's a coach or another player or both that fits what works for him and brings the best out of him. I think that's what's necessary.
And he is that good. He is that good
Yeah.
to make the necessary changes around him to allow him to have consistency and be the star that he is. He's worth it to me.
That's why George Karl messed up, because he could have put himself in a position to go, I'm working with what I have, and I'm going to make this really good. And by not doing that,
he put himself on the
you
top
put a
of the block.
wedge in between the guy who's scoring the most points for you.
But you know what? If he's on the chopping block and he's going to get paid $4 million a year for the next couple of years not to work,
he might have done that on purpose.
Yeah.
That's all.
Hey.
So what do we think? Does Cousins last the year? Does he make it through the season?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
so you think they're firing George Karl?
If anybody's going to go, it's going to be George Karl. Again, what's the easier replaceable part of this story? George Karl's the one that's replaceable. This guy who put up the most points for your team, you're not going to, you're going to start all over? You're going to, all right, George, you're right. I love this dude who's doing everything for our team, and it's been fantastic, and we're going to build something around him. But you're right. Take him out.
But maybe it is best for everyone that he goes somewhere else. Better for DeMarcus, better for the franchise. I just
better for George Karl.
Well, I'm saying we've seen guys go to another spot and be able to flourish, and then the other team, at times, maybe they could find a way to flourish themselves too. Maybe it's time for a split. And I'm not saying it's DeMarcus's fault. I'm just saying it may be in his best interest to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and some of those trade rumors, Julius Randle, I mean, he's going to be a different type of player in emotional maturity, leadership-wise, all of that, because he's young, more moldable than DeMarcus Cousins.
Right, and you would get the #2 pick, too. And you could take Jahlil Okafor. You could start there with another center. I mean, I think that there are ways around that, potentially, for both teams for it to work.
Well, if he were to be traded, he'd be the 6th player in NBA history to average at least 24 points and 12 rebounds per game and play for a different team the next season. So, Jameis Winston, meanwhile, is about to begin his first NFL season. So is it possible the #1 pick could throw more interceptions than TDs this season? We're playing the odds after the break.